Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're returning to our play-by-email series against XTRG, where he's playing as the Japanese and I am playing as the Allies in the Matrix game War in the Pacific Admirals Edition. We're about to see the combat replay for December 13th, so basically we're a week into World War II in the Pacific, and then after that we'll take a look at what I'm doing to respond to the turn results. I really already have my turn in hand and what I'm going to be doing, which is quite a lot, but I'll first show the replay. Now, if you remember, before we click the replay, last time around, the Prince of Wales was crippled by enemy torpedo bombers, or actually, sorry, not torpedo bombers. The Prince of Wales was crippled by enemy destroyers, and the Repulse, a battle cruiser, was also hit by torpedoes from a Japanese surface action group as we attempted to break up a invasion near the island, or near the Malay Peninsula, near the city of Mersing. We succeeded in destroying probably about a regiment at sea and prevented them from landing reinforcements to the Japanese soldiers at Mersing. But what we did not succeed in doing was getting our ships out intact. The USS Houston, a heavy cruiser, was sunk, and a light cruiser, the Java, was also sunk. That by itself would have been a huge victory, I think, but unfortunately the Prince of Wales and the Repulse both also took torpedoes, so now this turn is us trying to get those ships to escape, and also hopefully maybe having some torpedo bombers hit any remaining Japanese ships in the area. But we'll see how that plays out here in just a moment. Alright, so away we go. The early air phase, or at least the calculating air superiority range, all these other things. This French city just turned over to the Japanese. It was a French protectorate in China. Just was bloodlessly turned over to the Japanese, unfortunately for us. Meanwhile, we have our Repulse and Prince of Wales both ordered on flank speed. The Prince of Wales on flank to Singapore, because I don't think she'll be able to get anywhere else. And the Repulse is far away to the south, so hopefully she can get to escape from the region altogether. Meanwhile, we have some torpedo action here near Grigsby. You can see here the Japanese are firing torpedoes at one of our submarines here just off the southeast coast of the Philippines, where they're in the process of invading. They've got two landings, one here in Grigsby, one up here near the north toward Atimonan, along the island of Luzon, as they attempt to advance up the island toward Manila, the capital of the Philippines. You can see here quite a bit of depth charge action in the shallow waters off Grigsby. Two Japanese destroyers claim 2 hits on the S-38. The SS-38 is an old S-boat. The S-class were sort of the pre-war class of submarines that were essentially before the United States Navy was focused on trying to build fleet boats that could operate across the Pacific. They had more boats, I'd say similar in terms of duration and purpose to the German U-boats, although the U-boats were probably better. There you can see the Vendetta just took a torpedo from a Japanese submarine east of Mersing and apparently was sunk, unfortunately. Destroyers are vital, especially for the Commonwealth forces. The British and the Commonwealth forces really don't have enough destroyers. They've got adequate capital ships. They've got a lot of heavy cruisers. They really don't have much in the way of destroyers, unfortunately, here. And you can see we're launching some nighttime bombing raids on Singora, from Medina, or from Medine, in the Dutch East Indies. More submarine action. And I'm not sure if these subs are trying to get in and attack the Prince of Wales or not. You can see there were destroyers there, and it's a task force that's moving west, so I think it might actually be the Prince of Wales trying to escape. Now, the Prince of Wales had, like, was it 80 flood damage or something like that? It's a really high flood damage score, so Singapore is not a great spot for it to go. It likely will end up being a death trap for the Prince of Wales. It'll get to port, and then it'll end up getting bombed and sunk in port or something like that, I would guess. But it's really the only viable option. If we try and go any further, it'll frankly just get sunk. Or he'll move bombers into the Malay Peninsula and sink it in a turn or two, so, which he might actually do, I guess. I think he has some bombers in the Malay Peninsula, but he doesn't have any torpedo bombers, as far as I'm aware. So far, I've only seen torpedo bombers coming from the Saigon area. But we'll see now that we're going into the day phase what happens here. I'm assuming all of our naval forces are still in range of enemy air, so depending on what happens here. Okay, a lot of recon. Lots and lots of recon. Quite a bit of overcast, though, as well. Whoa. 61 Sally bombers attacking Victoria Point. Jesus. He is really sending his Sallies all out at Victoria Point. We had some we moved one of the 3 squadrons of the Flying Tigers into the Malay Peninsula. In the last turn they were at Victoria Point. They did escape to the south to, I think, Kutan or somewhere to the south. So I might have 1 or 2 planes left here that weren't fit to fly, but the squadron itself got out. But apparently his recon told him they were there, and now he's trying to bomb them. Fortunately for us, he's more or less bombing an empty airfield. Meanwhile, we've got some bombers trying to hit some Japanese troops in China, not doing any damage apparently. Giving Japanese fighters a little bit of something to do here. He's got some Nates up there on combat air patrol. Meanwhile, we've also got some B-17s going for Saigon, and where I think the majority of his heavy bombers are located here. You can see the runway took 2 hits. We had 5 B-17s damaged. No planes, as far as we can tell, destroyed on the ground. So far, no sign of his heavy bombers, though, going after our surface forces. Meanwhile, we've got some PBY Catalinas coming in here and attacking Japanese shipping near Patani. You can see here we order... Oh, wow, nice. All right. So we actually armed those PBYs with torpedoes, and they each carry 2 2 Mark 22 torpedoes, air-launched torpedoes. And you can see there we got 1 torpedo hit on a Japanese transport near Patani. Any Japanese merchant ship that we can sink is a good thing, especially ones that are involved in supporting amphibious operations. I'm assuming those are retreating ships from the Battle of Mersing. Looks like we got a lot of subs around Mersing. I don't see much in the way of actual shipping. More bombers hitting Victoria Point. Bombers hitting, again, more bombers hitting Victoria Point. Okay. More submarine warfare. Not a lot going on this turn here. Doesn't appear to be any surface combat. Quite a few depth charges going on. More torpedoes being launched at our destroyers. That was an anti-submarine task force that it was attacking. Our Sea Lion firing some torpedoes at enemy transports near Upper Eye. More Japanese troops unloading on the Philippines. And then a Japanese deliberate attack here at Hong Kong. We'll see how this plays out. Oh, no! Alright, well, Hong Kong has fallen to the Japanese a little bit early, but in a lot of my games I see it fall like on the first or second turn, so I guess it's good it lasted about a week. You can see there, Japanese had 3-1 assault odds. We lost 208, or they lost 208 casualties with 13 squads disabled, none destroyed. They did lose 2 engineer squad destroyed and 2 engineer vehicles destroyed. Japan doesn't have enough engineers and they don't have enough engineer vehicles, so I guess that's good. But you can see here we lost over 5,000 men, 148 squads destroyed, 513 non-combatant squads, etc., etc. So bigger losses for us. They were inevitable. I would have liked the garrison to hold out a little bit longer, but all things considered, I guess it's not the end of the world. Meanwhile, Japanese bombardment attack up here near the north, near Kusui in China. Does no damage to us. Japanese deliberately attacking on Guam. They brought a whole infantry regiment to the party. They didn't need to deploy anything near that many troops. That was overkill. They should have taken Guam on day 1, but they didn't. Anyway, about 141 casualties for them, mostly just sort of disabled. We lost 339. Meanwhile, we're bombarding Mersing. It looks like there's still only 1 Japanese infantry battalion on Mersing. Another 10 casualties inflicted on it. I think I may attack there next turn. Bombardment attack near Queeth in China. And I think that's going to about do it for this turn. Kodiak expanding fortifications, Pago Pago, Singapore, all good things. Yeah. Well, it looks our ships at the very least didn't get attacked from the air. We'll see what happened. We'll have to load up the next save now. So, just a moment. All right, well, let's take a look here. It's now December 14th, so we're around 1 week into the game. Round meaning exactly 1 week into the game. If we take a look here, we can see that the Prince of Wales made it to Singapore and it automatically went into pierside repair mode, which is not exactly what I would have liked. I would have liked to see how it was doing and maybe tried to cause it to escape further south, especially with the lack of enemy air activity. But at the end of the day, the game auto-disbanded the task force because I allowed it to. And I didn't know it was going to put it into repair, but it instantly put the Prince of Wales into repair. Now, that's probably a good thing. The Prince of Wales is up to 67 flooding, 51 of that's major. It's got 53 engine damage, 38 of that's major, and it's got 15 system damage. The ship can only make 4 knots, and yeah, it's not in good shape. With that being said, we do have it set up to pierside repair for critical repair priority, makes it the most important thing. And it's stood down, that means it's on repair. It's going to take 17 days to repair at critical damage. Now, what that means, or sorry, at critical pierside. Now, because it's pierside, it's not going to be fully repaired. As I'm assuming you could guess, 17 days isn't going to be enough to fully repair the Prince of Wales with all the damage and pounding she took. Just not realistic. But pierside basically means it's moored up to a pier, it's not in the dry dock. If we were to put it into the dry dock, it would take much longer. That's because with a pierside repair, what you get in 17 days would be 15 system damage repaired, so it would be down to 0. 50 or 16 of the flood damage would be repaired, so it would be down to 51. And 15 of the engine damage would be repaired, so it would be down to 38. So essentially, pierside repair lets you repair all of your system damage, and it lets you repair all of your non-major flood and engine damage. So essentially, we can get it down to 51 flood and 38 engine. I'm hoping that means we can get it up to around 13 or 14 knots in terms of its speed. Not very fast by any means, but certainly not as crippled when dealing with enemy submarines as 5 knots is. 5 knots is just asking to get hit by a torpedo. A blind submarine captain could hit you if you're moving at 5 knots. 15 knots, well, you got better odds. Now, with that being said, you can see here, if we were to put it into the shipyard, it would be quite a different story. Critical repair at the shipyard. To get this thing fully repaired and ready for combat, 538 days. 538 days. And it doesn't really matter what priority we put it into because it's the only thing in the shipyard, so it kind of takes the highest priority anyway. No, apparently high priority actually gets us in 341 days. So I guess if we got it to another shipyard somewhere else, then maybe it would be able to be repaired in about a year. But if we manage to get her to escape, she's going to be in port for quite some time in any event. Now, we're going to have her repair at critical speed to try and get everything taken care of in 17 days that can be taken care of without going into the shipyard. This would actually be 19 days, however, because when you have a ship in repair status, if you want to bring it out of repair status and send it back to sea, there's sort of a 2-day transition of like, all right, get all the repair people off the boat and get it sent out to sea. So this is really 19 days. I don't know if we're really going to leave it there 19 days. 19 days would put us into January of 1942. My guess is by January, the Japanese are going to have, probably taken almost all the way down the Malay Peninsula, if not all the way to Johor Bahru, maybe even Singapore itself. Who knows? But they certainly will probably be down in this sort of Mersing, Johor Bahru area. If that's the case, they're going to have bombers at Kutan, they're going to have bombers at Kuala Lumpur, and it won't matter if we can make 14 knots because we're going to get out toward here in one turn and then get hit by air and sunk right away because we're still going to have huge amounts of flood damage, 51 major flood damage. One torpedo might be all it takes to sink the boat. So I think it's about time, guys, that we start just accepting the fact that the Prince of Wales is almost certainly going to be sunk. She is not going to make it, guys. As much as I would like her to, she's just not going to make it. I am going to transfer... I mean, I guess we can... I don't know. We'll leave 2 of these guys here. I'm going to leave some ships in Singapore. One to act as bomb magnets if they do come for the Prince of Wales. The other is to ensure that when... Oh, shit. Transfer ships. I don't want to transfer between task forces. I just want these other guys to disarm or disband. But I am going to leave a few ships behind, primarily because my intent is to see if we can save her anyway. I know it's a bit of a forlorn hope. I'm not going to leave too many destroyers. I'm just going to leave 4 or 5 destroyers behind, and some HDMLs which can't get out anyway, harbor defense mine layers or harbor defense ships, and we'll see if we can get her out. But what I'll probably do is I'll probably leave the Prince of Wales in Singapore for about a week, and we'll see where we're at in about a week. And depending on the situation on the Malay Peninsula or in Borneo or what else XTRG is doing, then we'll have to make some decisions on what we do. But that's sort of my plan right now, is just to kind of leave it on for about a week and see what we can repair. And if we lose it, my hope is at the very least, if we lose it, it'll act as a bomb magnet. Basically, instead of bombing the supplies, instead of bombing the industry, instead of, well, not even really the industry, instead of bombing the troops in Singapore, my hope is that he has to, he spends a week or so bombing the Prince of Wales and wasting a week that he could be using to soften up our troops and letting our troops rest and relax and, get all their stuff up and ready for combat. That's my hope. So we'll see if that's what, materializes, but it is what it is. Meanwhile, we also did see some additional troops arrive. Quite a few engineer units are now in Singapore, multiple headquarters units, a lot of aviation support. Singapore is currently a fortress with regards to its air support. It has over 50,000 supply. It's got level 2 fortifications. It's building level 3. It has 87 engineers, 14 engineer vehicles. It's poised to turn into a fortress. And as many fortress levels as I can get that to go up, the better. The only thing that I am a little bit nervous in talking with Neuhauser about is that this is a very concentrated force. We have 155 aircraft in Singapore. That is a tempting target for XTRG, no doubt. And I would not be surprised if he sends large numbers of bombers against us. We do have 60 fighters, 46 of them airworthy, ready to intercept any enemy force that comes against us. I'm going to set that to about a 40% cap. I'm going to try and get my guys a little bit of rest and hope that he doesn't come for us this turn. But essentially, a 40% cap out of, 46 ready aircraft means we'll get a little bit less than, well, what is that, like 22, maybe 20 aircraft airborne. We also have quite a few aircraft in reserve, so it's possible that we may. It's possible that we may see some losses immediately replaced, but the key is keeping the airfield operational, because if that airfield starts taking damage, then we might be in some trouble. In addition to that, I am going to take the offensive a little bit. I'm going to have the 37 bombers that are currently in Singapore target one target in an effort to knock it out. The closest enemy airfield that is of note is Kota Bharu. Intelligence right now claims that it has some damage and claims that there are 80 fighters here. If I can knock out some Japanese fighters on the ground, great. But it's also the only target, really, that my bombers can reach. So I've got the 37 bombers in Singapore that are going to hit it, and I've got 12 Blenheim 1s that are in, what is the city here, Johor Bahru, that are going to try and knock out Kota Bharu. So that's the objective. Our Buffaloes are going to escort, but I don't think they can actually get all the way there. So what we're actually going to do, because I don't want to just let my aircraft get murdered, my Buffaloes cannot escort that far north. It's too long range. Well, about 10 of our aircraft are B-17s, which probably don't need to be escorted against the Japanese fighters currently. But the other group is 20 P-40 Warhawks, part of the Flying Tigers. And what we're going to do here is we're going to operate a sweep against them. So I've moved the P-40s from down here at Kuala Lumpur, because I wouldn't be surprised if he launches a bombing raid to close that airfield down. And I've moved them up north toward Taiping. They have no aviation support, which means they're basically going to break down after a couple of operations. But it is a level 3 airfield, which means we can take offensive operations out of that airfield. And we're going to fly a fighter sweep over Kota Bharu. My hope is that because of the distance, the fighter sweep arrives first, sweeps the skies clear of enemy fighters, and then by the time the bombers arrive, the sky is clear of enemy fighters, or at least the majority of them. That's a risky play, admittedly, but my real focus is if I can get 40 bombers or whatever, we can put some sticks on the ground here. Maybe we can destroy 10 or 20 of his fighters on the ground. Maybe we can shut this airfield down for a turn or two and really keep him on his heels. And then maybe we can move north towards Singora. But Kota Baru is the real threat here, because if he ever does move long-range bombers into here, then any attempt of the Prince of Wales to escape will be for naught. It will not be able to escape. So Kota Baru is the target because it's the main one that can threaten us. Singora is another airfield that could stage large enemy bombers, but it's a little bit smaller. It's a level 2. Kota Baru is a level 4. So in terms of coordination, he's going to get penalties there. But in addition to that, it's 3 hexes further north, 3 hexes less that our ships have to sail to get out of air range from the enemy. So, long-winded way of me saying, I'm going to do an offensive air action at Kota Baru. We're going to launch a fighter sweep to try and clear the skies, and then hopefully the bombers come in after. I don't know if the coordination will work that way, but we'll find out. And we're using a wide range of bombers, basically all the eclectic assortment of bombers that we have here. That is 11 B-17 Flying Fortresses, which should be, I mean, they might be damaged, but they shouldn't be destroyed by the enemy. I don't think he's got much in the way of heavy-hitting fighters. If he got some zeros there, maybe, but I don't think he does. And then we've got some 16 Blenheim 4s, and then we've got another 10 Hudson 1s. And those planes carry a reasonable punch. They're not very good against ships, but they carry 4 250-pound bombs. And the B-17s carry 8 500-pound bombs. So, and what do the other ones carry? The looks like the Hudsons carry 4 250-pound bombs. So the Blenheims and the Hudsons both carry 4 250-pound bombs, and the 17s carry 8 500-pound bombs at the ranges that we're currently operating, I believe. I think, anyway. Oh, no, it's extended range, which means they only carry 2 250-pound bombs. Great. That's even better. Is it extended? No, it's normal for the Blenheims. So the Blenheims will carry 4 250-pound bombs, and the Hudsons will carry 2 250-pound bombs. So 20 250-pound bombs will be tossed by the Hudsons if they all go. Their morale is all kind of low, too. These are all in the 40s, so they may not launch their attack. They may fail their morale check. Actually, this B-17 squadron almost certainly will at only a 37 morale. But theoretically, that allows us to get some 48 plus 20... would allow us to put 68 250-pound bombs on the target and 88 500-pound bombs. So about 120 bombs altogether, plus the Blenheim 1s, which are going to be launching at their extended range, which is 2. So, you know, a little bit around 150 bombs on on the airfield, potentially. We'll see. Meanwhile, what about this Blenheim squadron? Their morale sucks too, but we'll order them to bomb, not Singora, we'll order them to bomb Kota Baru. In addition to that, I have these Dutch bombers over here operating out of Menden. 2 of the squadrons are still flying night actions, one against Kota Baru, one against Singora, I believe. And then the other ones are going to launch a day raid on Kota Baru as well. So the night actions really are just to wear out the enemy air crews. If you bomb an airfield, it gives you a fatigue penalty if you're bombed at night. So these guys are going to be dropping 3 300-kilogram bombs each on the airfield as well. So again, trying to just overwhelm them with numbers. In addition to the 40 or so, or I guess 50 bombers coming out of Malay, there will be another 23 or 24 bombers coming out of the Dutch East Indies island of Sumatra. Again, depending on what all takes off and what the morale checks work out to be. But it's our biggest attempt at shock and awe against the Japanese. So we'll see how this all plays out, and hopefully it plays to our favor. All right, so that's kind of the situation. We showed the Prince of Wales. The Repulse is down here. She may have made it. I don't really know how far the enemy bombers can reach. I assume she's out of range of anything in the Vietnam area. If he does move aircraft into Malaya, then maybe they're still in range of that. But we do still have fighter cap flying over them from Sumatra. So hopefully if the enemy does come at us with anything, it'll be small, it'll be ineffective, and we'll be able to get away. I've issued them orders to go to Batavia, or actually I think this is Merrick. Or no, sorry, I've issued orders for them to go to Oosthaven, where they can dock up. It's a port size 3, and then we can suck down some fuel and escape to the islands, or the tip of Cape Town. So this is showing that we should be able to get 4 more hexes down here. And hopefully, I'm assuming that, I don't know, again, if he moves any bombers into the Malay Peninsula, we may be in trouble, but I don't have any recon saying he's doing that. So my hope is that we're relatively safe from there. So the Prince of Wales is also trying to escape. We don't have as many fighters over her, though, so that's a little bit concerning, but we'll see how it all plays out. I didn't want to make it go full speed, but maybe we should, just to make sure we get away. I hate the idea of causing more damage and potentially having flooding issues, but I'm going to keep her at flank speed just till we get down here. Then I'll feel a little bit more comfortable if there's no enemy aircraft around. So we'll keep that up, and we'll see how that works. She's in good enough shape that I can just send her right away to Cape Town to get repaired, I think. And she'll probably only be out of action maybe a month or two in addition to transit time. So I think she's in pretty good shape. We'll see. We should see her again unless she gets sunk this turn. Meanwhile, I've also issued orders for some reinforcements to go to Ambon and to Kandari to help delay the Japanese advance south toward Australia. In addition to that, I've ordered the reinforcement of the island of Fiji. So we have multiple Australian brigades loading up here. We can see we've got an Australian brigade loading up here at Melbourne to carry troops to the island of Fiji. That's a brigade with a combat value of about 70. We've got a convoy here loading up an Australian brigade, the 9th Brigade, also going to the island of Fiji. And then we have the 7th Australian Infantry Brigade also going to the island of Fiji. So we're sending about 4 brigades of infantry to the island of Fiji because I really think it's critical in our chain of defense to make sure that we hold on to Fiji. In addition to that, I've transferred a few more recon aircraft, some New Zealand recon aircraft, some Hudson LRs long range, and we've got some Vincents. They're all doing naval search, with the exception of the Vincents, which are basically, these are wildebeests, by the way, just with a different name, and they carry a 1,000-pound bomb instead of a torpedo. But we've got a whole bunch of recon going all around Fiji. We also set up a whole bunch of recon up north here, near Rabaul. We moved some Catalinas in here, so we've got recon going all over here. We've got recon coming out of Nauru Island. I moved a single Catalina to Nauru Island, a couple of Catalina groups to Ocean Island. We're trying to blanket this whole area in long-range recon, just in case he's trying to sneak anything in here. I don't know if he is. I'm assuming he's going to go for Tarawa soon, or maybe even Nauru or Ocean Island. These are all vulnerable. They're all pretty close to the Japanese possessions in the Marshalls, pretty close to Kwajalein Atoll. If he's going to push south and threaten our supply line with Australia, he needs to take these islands out. So I'm assuming he'll be going for something. I haven't seen him yet, but I also haven't had much recon going, so I'm assuming he'll go for Rabaul or Nauru or Tarawa or one of those, and once he takes those, then maybe he'll drive south on Fiji. So I've taken adequate measures. I've also brought in some recon aircrafts to Savi. I've got an American infantry regiment headed for Pago Pago, as well as some infantry headed for where is it over here? Christmas Island. He did take Canton, remember, and Canton has a good airbase. It actually probably should have a better airbase than it does in game. It had a 5,000-foot runway in real life at this time. It only gives him a level 2 airway. I guess that's good, but his Bettys can fly out of there anyway. I also moved some Catalinas into Palmyra, into Christmas Island, and they're all doing recon, again, shooting out westward. I have to think of one of them pointed back here, but essentially shooting out westward to keep an eye on what's all going on in and around these islands out here. We also have some recon going on over here of aircraft kind of checking out. You can see here we're checking out this whole region because we've spotted an enemy task force moving northwest. It looks like the Kitty Butai is heading north. You can see 54 fighters and 141 bombers. That seems a little bit small if that intel's right. I think the KB is supposed to have like 300 aircraft. That's only about 200. So I don't know if it's just bad intelligence, if they're in another task force. This one looks like more of a surface action group. But they do appear to be heading north, which to me, if I had a little crosshairs that I could put onto the screen here, to me that says they might be going for Midway. I don't know enough. I mean, maybe they're just heading north and then they're going to head west. Maybe they're going to head back toward Wake and refuel or something. But it does say they're moving northwest, so they could be going over here. I'm not sure. But that's why I've got recon shooting out this way to keep an eye on them. And I also have moved a couple of, or I've broken up the Catalina squadron at Midway, and they're kind of reconning south to get an idea of like, all right, where are these guys going? They also have some moving. I think I have some recon scheduled up north as well. Not too, I guess, a little bit to the west. I'm not too worried about the Kitabutai going north. I mean, maybe they're just bombing. I've got some other recon I've got a blanket like this direction, sort of northeast or northwest to southwest is kind of my focus here. I don't think anything's coming from the direction of Alaska. So, but essentially just checking out what's going on here. The Kitabutai by itself has no landing forces, so maybe he's just going to launch a raid on Midway. Maybe he's just going to head west toward Wake. Again, it is northwest. And maybe he's going to invade. I don't know. He certainly has been more aggressive than I would expect of a Japanese player at this point, striking out all the way south for Canton Island. So I wouldn't be surprised if he tries something else, thinking that Midway will be easy to take. I mean, honestly, if he wants to do that, be my guest. I have no desire to fight in and around Midway, but we'll see. I've got a sub out there. I've got a whole bunch of additional subs that are heading toward the Japanese islands to operate some commerce warfare. And then we've got the carriers. So we've got the Saratoga on the way, and we've got the Lexington and the Enterprise both out here. They're currently just sitting here. They're replenishing fuel, stripping fuel basically from anything that floats. The Lexington is very low on fuel. But I'm essentially replenishing the task force out here. I have some fleet oilers that are loading up, and they're going to meet this task force a little bit further south over here. And then I've got the Saratoga is going to move over to full speed so that she can blitz down south and join up with these task forces. I don't want them to merge. I want them to meet. Okay, good, meet. So the intent is to get all three of these task forces together with all these three carriers, and then we're going to swing the carriers southwest toward Australia. I'm not going to move them all the way to Australia. I think I'm going to park the carriers near Pago Pago as sort of a natural port facility that we can kind of base out of, although it's only a level 2 port. I'm not sure. Maybe Pago Pago. Maybe we'll move him to Christmas Island. I'm not sure. Somewhere out here. I would like my carriers in sort of a central location so that if he does drive south and starts taking islands over here, we'd be at an opportunistic chance to hit him. The other option is to raid Canton Island, which he just took. Give our air crew some experience in combat operations, maybe. If the Kitabutai really is headed this way, I don't want anything with it. My odds, 6 carriers versus 3 is not good odds in the first place, and they're terrible odds when you consider the American carriers are pretty green and inexperienced and aren't really suited for a matchup with them. But if I know he's up in this general direction, then my carriers can slide south, and whatever he does do over here, we might be able to take out some unescorted ships, get our crew some experience, and not have to risk the carriers at all. Kind of a hit them where they're not sort of a scenario, and I think that's kind of how I have to play as the allies at this point. In addition to that, whoops, not what I was looking for. But in addition to that, I'm doing a lot of shit here. I've got a lot of transport ships moving around. I'm moving some fighter aircraft to Fiji. So I'm moving a Marine fighter squadron and a Marine dive bomber squadron to Fiji, as well as, what is this? What is this unit? A base force as well to support them with aviation support. So I'm really going to try and make either Pago Pago or Fiji sort of a central linchpin in our defensive lines. What we really need to do is we need to build up Christmas Island and maybe Palmyra to a lesser extent. We need to build up potentially Panarian Island over here. Then we need to build up Pago Pago and we need to build up Fiji. Those will sort of block the Japanese advance southward. We could also work on building up Noma, which is on the French island of New Caledonia. That's probably also a good idea to make sure that we've got a strong link of fortifications all the way across the Pacific. And we've got a bunch of ships that are in the process of bringing troops in for that. So we're loading up a bunch of troops on the west coast in the United States to do just that. I don't know if any of them put to sea yet. I don't think they have. But I think I mentioned this last turn. Oh, no, not there. Down in San Diego? No, maybe they already took to sea. I've got some supply going to some of these islands at sea already. Yeah, you can see we've got 3,000 soldiers on the way to Pago Pago with a lot of equipment. What is this? This is a Marine regiment, so that'll make that a very formidable island. He'd probably have to establish a whole division to knock that out. And then we've also got a infantry regiment that's moving that direction as well. heading toward Christmas Island to really fortify up Christmas Island. And I think I've got some other ones as well. In addition to that, I'm moving a shit ton of cargo ships around. I've started some convoys. I'm moving a lot. I'm going to move all my tankers to Los Angeles, and I'm going to start some fuel convoys from Los Angeles. My intent is to load Australia with as much fuel as possible because Australia has a lot of heavy industry. If we hover over Sydney here, you can see it has 120 resources, 10 oil, and 500 heavy industry. I have no desire to send oil. That's not as efficient. What I plan to do is load Australia up with as much fuel as I can humanly carry. The reason I would do that is because if I put fuel into Australia, the industry in Australia will churn that out into supply. Australia can become a giant springboard for the Allies, a supply depot very close to the front lines, so that rather than having to bring supplies all the way from the east in the United States, I can just jump supplies on here in Canaries and put them into Port Moresby, put them into Guadalcanal. I can even bring supply in from Perth and load up Darwin and then, drive back north into the Dutch East Indies. So my objective here is to take as many tankers as I have, essentially, and start a supply sort of shuttle service. We're going to put some fuel in Pago Pago. We don't really need any fuel in Pearl Harbor right now. It has over 600,000 fuel. And we're just going to start a transit shuttle system loading up Australia with as much fuel. In addition to that, we're going to take a bunch of our AKLs, the really tiny and inefficient transports. We're going to move them to the East Coast. We're pulling everything out of Australia, everything out of the Dutch East Indies, dozens and dozens of convoys, dozens and dozens of ships. You can see here I just set a convoy up in Surabaya, whatever it's called. This one's going to Cape Town, I think. No, they're going to Perth. One of them is going to Cape Town, somewhere in here. Maybe not. Did I not issue orders for these guys yet? Is it over here? Oh, yeah. So, for example, I'm just using an example here. We've got one task force with 9 ships, mostly AKLs, a couple of AKs, and they're going to Cape Town. They're going to Cape Town, and then from Cape Town, they're going to go from an off-map transit to the eastern United States. The reason we're doing this is the game does not have ships use fuel when they move off map. So units moving between the eastern United States and Cape Town, which they can do, use no fuel. It takes time, but they use no fuel. And the reason is it's assuming that they're refueling along the way because that's a long route. So basically from the East Coast to South Africa. And then we're going to have a bunch of AKs and some some tankers transport fuel oil from Cape Town to Australia. So we're going to load Perth up with a bunch of fuel from Cape Town. We're going to load Sydney up with a bunch of fuel from the West Coast in the US. And we're just going to pump as much supply into Australia as we can so that in 12 months' time, we've got a huge stockpile of supply and we're ready to advance on the Japanese. In addition to that, I am transferring almost the entire Australian army either to some key defensive points. I've already mentioned those 4 brigades we're moving. We're also going to probably move 5 or 6 brigades worth and some armor to Darwin. The reason is, one, we're stripping out some defenses in Darwin to move north to delay the Japanese advance. But the other reason is because Darwin is a likely Japanese objective. It's worth 90 victory points to the Japanese. It's on the northern coast of Australia. It is, I believe, the most valuable point on the northern coast of Australia. And it's somewhat isolated and difficult for the Australians to retake if it's taken because of its location. So really what we're focusing on is building Darwin up as a fortress. So if the Japanese do decide they want to try and invade Australia, they'll have to go through our troops in Darwin, which should be very strong. If they do decide to attack Windheim or Broome or Derby, the advantage is Darwin is large enough that it can act as the springboard for any counteroffensive, whereas Windheim, if Darwin falls, is going to be subject to Japanese air and shipping attacks. Darwin is more well-positioned to act as a base against any of these other bases, but these other bases are not as well-positioned to act as a base against Darwin. Also, they're just not worth as much in victory points. So my assumption is that the Japanese would go for Darwin before they would go for anything else. The only other real likelihood, potentially, would be Perth, which is worth 650 victory points. So we're not going to strip any forces out of Perth. We're going to leave them where they are. Why am I doing that? I'm not moving them to Sydney. Yeah, okay. And I'm going to kind of build basically 2 strong defensive points on the north and west coast, some in Perth and some in Darwin. But I don't think I think it's unlikely that he would move as far south as Perth. The other advantage with Perth is it's, I believe, connected directly by rail with like Sydney and all these other parts of Australia, so I can quickly rush troops there if necessary. Darwin's going to take a lot longer to get troops to because they got to march across the open ground. In addition to all of that, I'm starting to build some fortifications along this line here in Burma to protect the supply routes to China. I'm also moving a lot of my transports that are in India here to Karachi or to Abadan or Aden, and we're going to start pumping India full of fuel and supply as well to fuel the Indian economy, which will then allow us to directly use that supply in driving forward with our offensives in Burma when they eventually do come out. So, that's a lot of stuff for me to say. Not a lot of huge movements on our part, but this was a very busy turn with probably thousands of clicks with me getting everything in order. The only other thing I want to call out is one new fresh corps just arrived in Yichang, where we had our offensive kind of ground to a halt. We've got another corps, probably the 94th Chinese Corps, should arrive next turn, and then 2 or 3 other corps should arrive in the next few turns. So 2 corps are trying to cut off Yichang by taking this roadway here to the south, and then we've got 2 more corps here to the north that are trying to move in. They're going to take a little bit longer to get into position, so I may launch an attack next turn when the 94th arrives. We know the Japanese have, I think, about 1 fresh division, but they have no fortifications left because we reduced those fortifications down to 0, although the Japanese are trying to build more. So my hope is that division for the Japanese has around 300 AV. Right now we have 436, so I think we have a slight edge over them, but we'll wait till next turn when we get another 200 or so AV, and then we may launch an attack, hopefully with 2-to-1 odds against them. Their troops that we attacked could be resting and resupplying as well, so they may be gaining some of that AV back, but whatever they're getting back in attack value should be counteracted by the 347 assault strength that we'll have coming in, which will nearly double our strength here, and then I'll launch an attack and hopefully take the city of Yichang back from the Japanese. In addition to that, we have 3 Chinese corps here on the flank between Hankow and Xinyang, and I'm launching a shock attack here with these forces. They're probably only going to get weaker because we have a very difficult time supplying them in their current location. So they have sufficient supplies right now, but not really any prospect to get more. So my hope is the 553 supply we have there is enough to drive back what probably is maybe a division's worth of enemy troops here and drive them back either into Xinyang or Hankow. And then once that happens, I've got a huge mass of Chinese troops here that'll converge on Xinyang and attempt to destroy the 2 Japanese units that are still in the city. And then maybe in the next week, we'll have retaken both Yichang and Xinyang from the Japanese, which hopefully will throw whatever their offensive plans in China are into disarray. My overarching objective is to hopefully prevent the Japanese from being able to use China as a way to transport their supplies to closer to Japan for the Japanese industry. That's my hope. I think they can dump the Dutch East India resources into China, and it can just kind of either churn out supply for them or allow them to just transit the supply to Shanghai, and then they can move this short route here or over to maybe even to Fusan. I'm not sure how the transport route works. I think actually they could do that. I think they could dump supply into China, maybe, I don't know, Shanghai. It wouldn't make much sense. I was talking to Belugan. He was basically like, make sure that when you're using China, you don't allow them to use China as a transit so they can get all the resources and supplies over here and then just have a really quick shuttle route between Japan and the mainland in Asia. But I'm not sure how that route works. I don't know if these major roads can transport supply. I always thought it was just these little checker icons, but I don't really know how all that works. So anyway, in terms of the Philippines, we're falling back toward Bataan for most of our forces. We're going to leave a small blocking force. I think I'm actually going to move him south of Manila to trip XTRG up so that he doesn't get there quite too quickly. And we'll probably leave one behind in Linyang as well, just so, to keep him thinking. Meanwhile, we've withdrawn the bulk of what's left of some of our fighter squadrons here to Zambrona in the southwest, and that'll allow us to transit them into the Dutch East Indies here, hopefully before too long, unless, of course, he has any ships that randomly show up and take that base and destroy those squadrons. We'll see. With that being said, there's a lot going on this turn. There's probably a lot more, but I've been talking for over 40 minutes, so I think we'll wrap this episode up here. This is December 14th, 1941, in the current situation. I'm going to shoot the turn back over to XTRG, and I don't think I'll be able to get any more turns in myself until after the 26th of December, so he may have that turn for a little while. holiday plans and other things going on are just going to prevent me from having too much free time over the next few days. With that being said, I hope you guys did enjoy this episode. I hope you all have a wonderful Christmas or holiday or whatever you celebrate. And until next time, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you for watching, and I'm out. Oh, also one other thing. I am going to plan on putting together like a weekly update episode, sort of the quick hitters over the last week. It's not going to happen probably till after the new year, but my plan is to do that. We are a week into the game, or will be after this turn. December 7th through the end of the 14th, I guess, would be the first week. Although technically the first turn was December 6th. But in any event, we are about a week into the game, so I do want to do some weekly, or probably more like at our current pace, these are going to be few and far between because we're playing very slowly. But every week I'd like to do a recap episode that kind of gives the high points of what's gone on over the last week. Anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in. Till next time, as I already said, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you for watching, and I'm out. Goodbye. I don't even know what that kind of voice was. I was thinking like Italian mafia boss, but I don't think it came out that way. Whatever. Bye, guys.